I never thought I'd be the one sitting here, recording this, but after what happened at my family's grand celebration last week, I just couldn't keep it to myself anymore. Imagine being a 30-year-old successful architect, someone who has built a life, a career, and a reputation from the ground up, only to be told by your own parents that you aren't adult enough to sit with the grown-ups at a formal dinner. They invited me to this black tie event at one of the most expensive restaurants in the city, ostensibly to celebrate my father's retirement. But when I showed up in my best suit with a gift that cost me 3 weeks' salary, my mother pointed toward a small, rickety table in the corner covered in a paper tablecloth and told me to take a seat with my 7-year-old cousins. Was I wrong for what I did next? I mean, I didn't just walk out. I made sure that night was a lesson they would never, ever forget. Tell me in the comments right now if you would have just swallowed your pride and sat down with the chicken nuggets, or if you would have done exactly what I did. To really understand why this hurt so much, I have to go back to the beginning. My parents, Richard and Elena, have always been obsessed with status and the hierarchy. Growing up, I was the middle child, the one who didn't quite fit the mold they had carved out for their perfect family. My older brother, Marcus, followed in my father's footsteps and became a corporate lawyer. My younger sister, Chloe, married a guy who comes from old money. Because I chose the arts, even though architecture is literally a blend of science and engineering, my parents always treated my achievements as if they were cute little hobbies. When I landed my first major firm job, my mom asked if I'd be drawing houses all day. When I got promoted to a senior position, my dad just nodded and asked if Marcus had told me about his new partnership yet. It was a constant, grueling battle for a seat at their metaphorical table, but I thought things had finally changed. Over the last year, I've been doing incredibly well. I've been featured in magazines, I bought my own home, and I finally felt like I was standing on my own 2 feet as a peer to them. So, when the invitation arrived in the mail, a thick, cream-colored card with gold foil lettering, I felt a rush of genuine excitement. It said a formal evening to honor the career of Richard Harrison. It was at La Valliere, a place where you usually have to book 6 months in advance. I spent $2,000 on a vintage watch for my father, thinking this was the moment we'd finally bridge the gap. I arrived at the restaurant feeling like $1,000,000. I was wearing a tailored charcoal suit, my hair was perfect, and I felt confident. I walked into the private dining room, and the atmosphere was stiflingly elegant. Huge floral arrangements, crystal chandeliers, and a long, magnificent mahogany table set for 14 people. I saw Marcus and his wife sitting near the head of the table. I saw Chloe and her husband laughing with my parents. There were place cards made of silver. I started walking toward the main table, looking for my name, when my mother stepped in front of me with a tight, plastic smile. She didn't hug me. She didn't even compliment my suit. She just leaned in and whispered that they were a bit tight on space at the main table because some of my father's important colleagues had decided to bring their spouses last minute. She then gestured to a small, circular table tucked away near the kitchen swinging doors. It was decorated with primary, colored balloons and had plastic cups. My 3 youngest cousins, all under the age of 10, were already there, coloring on the paper tablecloth with crayons. I thought she was joking. I actually laughed out loud, waiting for the punchline, but she just stared at me, dead serious, and said that since I was the only one without a +1 or a traditional career path, it just made the most sense for me to supervise the children so the adults could enjoy their wine and conversation without distraction. The disrespect was like a physical blow to the chest. I looked over at the main table and saw there were actually 2 empty chairs right next to Marcus. They weren't short on space, they were making a point. They wanted me to know that in their eyes I was still the child of the family, the one who didn't count. My father looked up, made eye contact with me, and then immediately looked away, adjusted his cufflinks, and continued talking to his boss. He didn't even acknowledge my presence. I stood there for a long time, clutching the gift bag with the expensive watch, feeling the heat rise in my neck. I realized then that no matter how much I earned or how many buildings I designed, I would always be the kid to them because they needed someone to look down on to feel superior. I felt a wave of cold, calm anger wash over me. It wasn't the loud, screaming kind of anger. It was the calculated kind. I took my seat at the kids' table. I sat there in my $2,000 suit, towering over my little cousins, and I watched as the waitstaff brought out the first course of escargot and fine champagne to the main table. Meanwhile, a waiter brought our table a plate of lukewarm sliders and apple juice boxes. So, that's where I was, sitting at a plastic-covered table, being asked by a 7-year-old if I knew how to draw a dinosaur, while my parents toasted to success and legacy 20 feet away from me. I had a choice. I could have stayed, played the part, and let them humiliate me for the rest of the night. Or I could take my power back in a way they'd never see coming. Before I tell you the absolute chaos that happened next, I want you to stop. Seriously, go down to the comments right now and tell me, what would you have done? Would you have caused a scene right then and there? Or would you have waited for the perfect moment to strike? I really want to know if I'm the only one who thinks their behavior was completely unforgivable. All right, here's how the rest of the night went down. I didn't cause a scene, not yet. I played the good sport. I talked to my cousins, I helped them with their drawings, and I acted like I didn't have a care in the world. But while I was doing that, I was busy on my phone. See, my father's retirement celebration wasn't just a family dinner. It was a PR event for the firm he was leaving. He wanted to go out looking like a beloved patriarch and a titan of industry. I knew the manager of Lavalier because I had actually consulted on the redesign of their outdoor terrace a year ago. I caught the manager's eye, signaled him over, and whispered a few words. I told him that I'd like to pick up the tab for the entire evening, every bottle of wine, every steak, every single cent, as a surprise for my father. The manager, knowing my professional reputation, smiled and agreed, assuming I was being a devoted son. But there was a catch. I told him I wanted to present the gift myself during the speeches. When the time came for the toasts, my father stood up. He gave a long, rambling speech about how he had built a legacy of excellence, both in his office and in his home. He pointed to Marcus and Chloe, calling them the pillars of the next generation. He didn't even mention my name. Not once. When he finished, the room erupted in applause. That's when I stood up from the kids' table. The room went silent because, honestly, the sight of me unfolding my 6-foot-2 frame from a tiny chair was pretty ridiculous. I walked over to the main table, took the microphone from my father's hand before he could sit down, and smiled at the crowd. I told everyone how inspiring it was to see my father value legacy so much. I told them how much it meant to me that he invited me here tonight, even if he felt my proper place was at the junior table, with the toddlers. I saw my mother's face go pale. I saw his boss's eyebrows shoot up in confusion. Then I pulled out the gift bag. I handed him the watch and said, "Dad, I know you've always looked down on my career, but it's been successful enough that I've actually paid for this entire dinner tonight. Every single one of you is eating and drinking on my dime. I then looked at the manager, who was standing by with the final bill, and I pulled out my black card. I paid the $16,000 bill right there in front of everyone, but I wasn't done. I turned back to my father and said, "Since I'm the one paying for the adults to eat, I think I've earned the right to decide who stays. And honestly, the company at the kids' table is much more honest." I then told my parents that since they clearly didn't think I belonged at their table, they were no longer welcome at mine. I informed them that the down payment I had promised to help them with for their new retirement villa was officially off the table. If they wanted to treat me like a child, they could learn to live on a child's allowance. I walked out of that restaurant without looking back, leaving them sitting in a stunned, suffocating silence while their colleagues whispered and stared. The aftermath was a total explosion. My phone was blowing up for 48 hours straight. Marcus called me unhinged and petty. Chloe told me I ruined Dad's big night. My mother sent a long, rambling email claiming I had misinterpreted the seating arrangement and that they were just trying to keep the family together. But they haven't apologized, not once. They only care that I embarrassed them in front of their social circle. The best part, 2 of my father's colleagues actually reached out to me the next day, not to scold me, but to ask for my firm's business card because they were impressed by my boldness. My parents are currently scrambling to figure out how to fund their retirement lifestyle without my help, and honestly, I've never felt lighter. Looking back, I realize that some people will always see you as the version of yourself they can most easily control. If you don't stand up and demand a seat at the table, or better yet, build your own table, they will keep you in the corner forever. I lost a relationship with my parents that night, but I gained my self-respect, and that's a trade I'd make every single time. Like this video if you think I was right to put them in their place, and subscribe for more stories about people finally getting the revenge they deserve. Share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section. Did I go too far, or did they get exactly what was coming to them? I'll see you all in the next story.